Good morning, campers, and welcome to Radio Camp Half-Blood, a Percy Jackson read-along podcast. I'm Bea.
And I'm Zach.
And this week we read Chapter 9 of The Last Olympian, Two Snakes Save My Life.
Oh, those sneaky, slippery snakes. Yeah, they really did help Percy Jackson in the situation, though Percy Jackson can't get killed, but I guess there's worse things than killing someone, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, well, he can die. He has a weakness.
You see what's going to happen is Percy Jackson's going to have to, mail like a letter or something because Hermes is the god of messengers. That postage stamp's going to be like $1 billion.
It's like send him like a piece of hate mail. It's like, it's addressed to me. You suck. He just like opens it.
No, it's like it's like a box. He opens it up and a punching glove comes out and hits him in the face.
Oh yeah, it's like the old Yzma trick. I guess that's in reverse because she smashes the box with a hammer.
Yes, that's exactly what she would do.
Anyway, I was right about the George and Martha thing. I guess those are the only two snakes we know about in this series.
Yeah, George and Martha came back. They weren't elephants, but they were snakes. And I've always loved their banter. Like for me, I have a very big soft spot for like older, like married couples that bicker with each other. And this is pretty much what it is. It's just two people bickering with each other about everything. And I love it.
I don't know. I like a little bit of comic relief because I do feel like it has been a little bit doom and gloom a lot in these chapters. So it's nice to have like just a little bit of like a funny sort of release of tension, especially in a chapter like this where there's still a lot of intense things going on with, the gods and meeting back up with Annabeth and all the campers and Percy having to like awkwardly explain that he has what was they called the Curse of Achilles, basically.
Yeah, the Curse of Achilles.
Which is kind of, I didn't know that they called it that because I'm pretty sure, was he like the first example of somebody who went into the River Styx to be impervious? And then I guess that's why they call it that?
Yes, but also there's also the term the Achilles heel. So
right, yeah, so I guess he's the most famous example of that kind of weakness.
Yes, and once again, it was funny how like last chapter, I'm like, man, I kind of miss Annabeth being here, but then I realized, oh wait, she would have told Percy, no, this is a bad idea, and Percy Jackson and Annabeth meet up, and she's like, yeah, this was a bad idea, but this is the only way. We'll probably get into the Curse of Achilles because I find this to be so fascinating that everyone has different thoughts and feelings about it. Annabeth really grows as a character. We actually get some meaning to her knife. We get a lot of flashbacks in very clever ways. And for me, I do agree with you, the whole comic relief stuff. Like that's what Percy Jackson really shines on, is it not entirely being doom and gloom. Like sometimes when you can like laugh out loud, that's when I have the most fun reading Percy Jackson. And for the last couple of chapters, it's just been all doom and gloom to the most part. Like there's some funny things like in, Hades talking with Persephone and all those things. But having like two comic relief characters sometimes does lighten the mood. Like, just imagine if Grover actually went with them to Hades and how fun that would have been.
Yeah, exactly. I do think that sometimes that is really needed. Because it's funny because I feel like I've found myself in the past maybe criticizing Rick Riordan for going for like somewhat of like a juvenile joke or something like maybe silly for what's happening. But without it, I really notice the lack of comedy because you kind of need that to balance like a lot of like these really intense stakes going on, especially in this last book where everything's kind of coming to a head with all of like the antagonists and Percy making a lot of like serious sacrifices to try and beat them and a lot of complicated coordinating with all the different campers to try and beat them. Like there's a lot going on.
And that's always has been like the trope of like the last book of any series is usually the most serious because we have our character who has grown exponentially through all the books. Like there's plenty of examples I could pick from, like from the first Mistborn to the Hero of Ages. That book becomes super serious. Examples like, I guess, Harry Potter is another example where it goes from like super whimsical to just, man, everything here's depressing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like that's sort of like just a YA inevitability in a way, because as the plot is, of course, going to get more serious as you're trying to like resolve all these grand themes that you're introducing, usually in a book like this. I mean, it's always like the fate of the world is in the hands of the protagonist or maybe a handful of characters. And so, of course, it's going to get more intense, but then it's also a coming of age thing. So as the characters get older, things get more intense and dark and less sort of like whimsical. So it's both of those things happening at the same time kind of make the story more serious.
I totally agree with you in that sense, because I think when it comes to a lot of these books, especially in Percy Jackson, I think it's safe to assume that Percy Jackson has lost like his innocence, almost like the loss of innocence of a kid. Like he's now an adult and worrying about the world in different ways. Of like, oh my god, if I die, if Annabeth gets hurt, like it used to be, I'm gonna jump off the gateway arch and hopefully I win.
Right, yeah, the sort of like the weird nerve you have as a kid where you kind of don't really actually think about your mortality. Well, like Percy now has such an awareness of mortality that he actually goes to very great lengths to be immortal just so he can like beat this enemy. So it really goes from like feeling like, yeah, there's high stakes. Like obviously he learns like all this responsibility is on his shoulders as a child of the big three, even in the first book. But now he's like that responsibility is like actually sort of resonating with him, and he's like realizing, oh right, like I guess I have to reckon with the fact that I have to basically save the world, and how am I going to do that,
It's kind of funny that we kind of talked about this because it kind of reminds me of a quote from The Name of the Wind. Here it is, B. When we are children, we seldom think of the future. The innocence leaves us free to enjoy ourselves as adults can. The day we fret about the future is the day we leave our childhood behind. Which is very similar to Percy Jackson in that sense. And I do like when we have like George and Martha and we have things that was like, oh yeah, we are more into like the familiar of Percy Jackson where things could be fun and adventures could be fun.
Yeah, I've kind of missed that in a way, which is like, of course, like this is going to happen in the last book, but I was kind of relieved that they showed up. But then at the same time, Hermes shows up and you're like, oh, you're a character I've seen before. You kind of had a bit of like a fun personality when we first met you. And then he's like super scary and intense. And I'm like, oh, okay, you're scary too. I guess everything's intense right now.
What are you going to do, postage boy? Oh God, I guess he could do a lot because he's a god still. Like, we joke about like in the minor gods, we talk about like, oh, like Apollo, he could easily like just run the sun into the earth and everything's gone. Like if a god gets like, decides like, say F it, he can like destroy the entire world very effortlessly.
Well, yeah, that's sort of like Ares in the first book, or really, I mean, not Hades exactly, but Hades is sort of like guilty by being like a bystander who doesn't do anything.
When we first saw this chapter, I thought it was going to be that we wouldn't have run into Hermes, we would have run into Ares, because the way to describe like he has like an aviation jacket on. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot maybe Ares would be the one person that stays back because he just like loves murder and war. Like,
so he wants to
obviously.
But obviously, I think he would just leap right into the actual war conflict part of it because that's what he would do. So he wouldn't stay behind. Actually, that might be his worst nightmare. It would be to like stand guard at Olympus, waiting for someone to show up.
But wouldn't that make sense? Because that would be his punishment. Like the world's greatest war's
true.
going
he
on.
He would be miserable.
Yeah, he'd be miserable, like, because that would be like a typical Greek punishment, wouldn't it?
That's true. Though it's I don't really understand why Hermes specifically ends up being the guy who has to watch after Olympus. I guess because he's the messenger god, so like he can send a message to the people who show up, and that he does have messages for Annabeth, for instance, and for Percy. The one for Percy isn't really so much the message; it's like a "Hey, you stay away from my daughter" kind of thing.
Yeah, it's more like, "Hey, buddy," like he like kisses his fist. Yeah, I got express delivery for you. From Express and Delivery.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, Hermes is angry at Percy, but so is Annabeth's mom.
There's a lot of angry against Percy.
A lot of people aren't thrilled with Percy right now, honestly.
So the chapter kind of opens up with Percy Jackson and Miss O'Leary getting to Central Park. That's where they come out of. And no one bats an eye at any of this.
And no one notices because it's New York, which I love that he describes that.
Which is true because I've witnessed this firsthand. Of like weird things happening.
Yeah, no, like anything. Well, yeah, that was us walking through Times Square, and it's just like every possible iteration of human interaction is happening all within like 5 feet of you. Like you could look in any direction. It's like literally we witnessed like on one side like a breakup was happening, and then on the other side like a child eating a lollipop, and then like a guy breakdancing. Like just truly the gamut of humanity.
So this is like funnier to me because this seems like, oh yeah, if there's like a Greek invasion or monsters are in New York, people might not bat an eye for a good couple days.
No, I don't think so.
And it's funny because you have the situation, like, again, the idea of Percy Jackson being on the subway and he's like super, like he's godly god and he still has to ride the subway and do all these things is hilarious to me because he's indestructible, but he still has to take every form of transportation possible to get to the Empire State Building that isn't the Chrysler Building, because I keep getting that confused to the day I die.
I mean, they're similar looking. I kind of get it. If you're near Grand Central and you see a building that you think is the Empire State Building, it's probably the Chrysler Building.
But here's the scenario. Percy Jackson calls me up because, of course, I now have Percy Jackson's number. Is that it's like,
And he tells you to meet you at Olympus. And then
yeah,
you
I'm
go
at the
to
Chrysler Building.
Building.
Hey, Percy, where are you guys? I'm here. No one's here. We're at the Empire State Building. Oh, I'll be right there. So I start like booking it. Oh, I went to the wrong one again.
Yeah, they're not even that far apart from each other, but yeah, it's a fair mistake to make. I mean, I made that mistake when I was younger. You listen, you're not a local. I'm not even a local to New York City. I'm just from New York, but regardless, I thought that was pretty funny.
So what ends up happening is Percy Jackson, of course, breaks the rules and calls Annabeth on his cell phone because it's a taboo to call someone because it just shoots a beacon up in the air.
It like broadcasts where you are, sort of, which this is kind of dumb, right? Because he already knows that he's meeting up with other demigods too. So it's like, we're all going to meet up together as demigods. And as it is, that's going to attract a bunch of monsters. Let me also use my phone. But it is funny that he notes that he has really good service because he's like at the center of the magical whatever, like the mythical world, because he's so close to Mount Olympus.
Well, to be fair, he does have big stick energy, meaning like he's indestructible. So even if a monster came at him,
That's true. Yeah, like I guess he is impervious now, which is kind of like weird to adjust to because in my mind and in his personality, for the most part, he's still, good
squishy
old
boy.
Percy, like who's just like this kind of like dumb kid who makes like silly jokes and doesn't take things too seriously, and now he has like these unfathomable powers. So it's like it's very funny to kind of reconcile that. I guess that's kind of the point of this chapter.
It's very comedic in that way if you have that. But I like that Percy Jackson calls Annabeth and she's worried about him because, as you would be, Percy Jackson does some stupid things and things happen. He disappears. Of course, Annabeth would be worried about him.
I like how he calls her and she's immediately like, "Where are you? What is wrong?" Like just like has like that very specific like angry concern where it's like it's obviously comes from a place of love. It's like, "You stupid idiot, I love you. Don't you tell me where you are?" kind of thing, where I find that very endearing.
Totally like a overprotective mom vibe, as well as like, you were supposed to call me 10 minutes ago on the dot.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's like that kind of, because she's always, I think, been his protector to some extent because of, like, I don't know, her being wiser and better at decision making. So he's always, like, making the impulsive choice and her standing there, like, on the sidelines, like, that's a bad idea, Percy.
Well, it's also like poetry in the sense of like the first person to really take care of Percy was Annabeth when he first goes to camp because he was knocked out by the Minotaur. So, of course, she's going to be protective of Percy in that way.
No, it's interesting though because then in this chapter we're gonna find out a little bit more detail about who first took care of her and about like her backstory with Luke. I mean, we kind of it was implied a lot of this stuff about her and Luke and Talia and like how she's sort of trauma bonded with them, but
Well, I mean, it's been implied since the second book.
well, they told the story of the Centaur, or not? Sorry, not the Centaur, the Cyclops.
Yeah, they talk about it, and they also go to one of the safe houses, remember?
Right, exactly. So we've heard other stuff about this, but we get more into it, I guess. I don't know if the book is trying to be like, see, that's why she still has a soft spot for Luke or something, or like, I don't know if it's trying to justify that, but there is a bit of like a...
We'll get to it. I think there's a very interesting dynamic to this, and I think it's sweet and tender, but also, like much things that are sweet and tender, you can have burn edges to everything.
Yeah, well, of course, then we have the trademark Percy thing of him, like, having something happen in a vision or a dream, and then, like, not talking about it because he's, like, I don't know, a dumb baby who doesn't want to, like, talk about his feelings.
Okay.
So he's like, I'm not going to say that I dreamt of you when I went into the River Styx. So he's just going to, like, not mention that part and just mention the part that'll make Annabeth angry instead.
So what ends up happening is Percy Jackson makes it to the Empire State Building as all of the vans from Camp Half-Blood make it there just in time. I like how they're all like Delphi strawberry fields.
Yeah, which is not too many people, honestly.
There's about 40 people, 40 demigods.
Yeah, which is like, I think Percy says that's the most campers he'd ever seen outside of camp before, but also it wasn't like a lot for, an army.
You don't need much for an army. Look at the Spartans. They only had 300 against hundreds of thousands of Persians. You don't need many.
Right, I get that. There's definitely that existing mythology thing of like, oh, the few versus the many, and obviously they're all very dedicated to the cause and that kind of thing. This is pretty stressful because it's kind of their job to before they can even fight or do anything, they have to go to Olympus and convince them that all of this has been a diversion and there have been like sort of misdirected their forces to the wrong places.
It's a sleight of hand trick. They're probably like, oh, the major force is happening here, but if like a small task force of people could get to Olympus in and out and you destroy it, something might happen. Because remember, we also bring up the new red herring again of Bessie. Bessie's still at Olympus.
Bessie's here. Yeah. I don't know why, but the second I saw Bessie, I was like, is he just gonna kill Bessie? I don't know why. Like, I just was like, okay, he's still the big three. Oh, but no, I guess but he's not 16 yet. Oh, I don't know.
He's gonna be 16.
Like, is he gonna eventually kill her?
Very, very soon. Like, again, there's like these plot pieces coming together.
In like a few days, right? I forget the timeline.
They have 3 days.
Right now,
about
like very soon.
3 to 2 days. It's in the time period of we'll probably have a couple.
Soon, with less than a week, he's gonna be
less
16,
than a week,
so.
more than a month.
But I don't know why. I had like this impulsive like idea of Percy just like walking up to Bessie and be like, huh, like just stabbing her. I don't know why.
B, do you have like a feeling like it's like almost like a fade to black and it cuts back and Percy Jackson's eating like barbecue? This was so good. Ooh, it's sushi and beef.
And that's the end of the story. Well, I kind of forget what the prophecy was regarding what do you call that thing? Yeah, Ophiuchus. Let's just call her Bessie. That sure is a mouthful.
So what the prophecy is pretty much is that if someone of the big three kills Bessie and basically throws the entrails into a fire, they get unimaginable power because you're killing the most innocent creature humanly possible.
Why didn't Percy do that instead of going to the River Styx?
B, look at that cow face. Could you murder Bessie?
It's a baby.
It's a baby.
Look at it. Yeah, like PETA appears and it's just like, look at this cow. How could you hurt this cow?
B, here would be the visual joke. Percy Jackson would put his sword up and you would see Bessie with like big, like blubbery eyes, like twinkling at him. And he's like, oh no.
Yeah, no, exactly. It would be, actually, have you ever seen, oh my God, this like used to be a running joke between my sister and I. There was like this commercial for, I think it was Chipotle, I want to say.
Oh yes, Chipotle.
And it was like about how they have like ethical farming practices or something. I don't exactly remember, but it's like this claymation commercial where it's like a Fiona Apple cover of Pure Imagination. It's very emotionally affecting for a freaking Chipotle commercial, but there's a scene where they show a very sad cow being put into a crate, like making a very heartbreaking face, and you could just tell they're trying to like emotionally manipulate you. And I feel like in my mind's eye, that's how I picture Bessie looking all the time, is that very sad cow from that commercial.
No, I think of it as like a happy cow because all the happy cows come from California. But
oh yeah, I guess that's true.
Yes, they do. How should I know? I live next to a bunch of dairy farms, and they're all good boys and girls out there. Those lovable creatures. But I have a feeling that the joke would be every time Percy Jackson would look at Bessie, she's doing something even cuter, like she has her tongue stuck out.
Yeah, no, she's just doing something more adorable. And he's like, I can't do it. I can't.
That's it. Nico, we're going to take a dip in the River Styx, everybody. Pack it up.
It's like, sorry, I'm just going to yeet out of here. I can't bring myself to kill this cow.
But I like the whole situation of just getting up to Mount Olympus because all of them shuffle into the lobby, which I haven't been inside the Empire State Building, but I would imagine one of those buildings would be super cramped to have 40 kids holding what would probably be through the mist like baseball bats and cudgels. Or maybe like Nerf swords.
I just really love that Percy's like, yeah, so you could either like let us in or we're just going to hang out in your lobby and then a bunch of monsters are going to come because there's 40 demigods just hanging out.
I just love how casual the guy at the front desk is like, oh yeah, this way. Just take the express elevator. Don't go through the metal detector because that'd be super bad.
Yeah, with all of their celestial bronze in tow.
Yes, because it would just be like a nightmare. And I love how Percy Jackson just throws him a drachma and he just like catches it in my eye, like he's not even looking at it. It's like reading probably like a YA book or something. That's probably that would probably be Rick Riordan's cameo. Would be this guy if they ever make this live action. Be
with the guy who's just like sort of blasé standing at the it's not even really at the entrance of the.
No, he's like at the front desk
because it's like he's at the front desk of like the Empire State Building, being like, "Yeah, what are you talking about? That floor doesn't exist." But like, it's very clear that it does exist. It reminds me a lot of like the platform 9 3/4 thing of like Harry asking that and then being like, "That doesn't exist." I think I must have talked about that when they first introduced that concept way back when we read that book, but I can't.
It's such a famous concept that we probably have used it multiple
It's
times.
like very similar though. It's that same idea of being like, what are you talking about? This thing is made up. And it's like, you're clearly just saying, wait, hold on. What was the phrasing again? There was like a specific way in which the guy like says that it doesn't exist, but in like a sort of compulsory way.
Yeah, the Empire State Building only goes up to this many floors, kid.
Yeah.
It's something along those lines.
No, I said 600th floor. He checked us out. His eyes were pale blue and his head was completely bald. I couldn't tell if he was human or not, but he seemed to notice our weapons, so I guess he wasn't fooled by the mist. There is no 600th floor, kid. He said it like was a required line he didn't believe. Move along. So it's like, who is this guy? Like, what a fascinating, weird side character.
I would love to meet. I'm going to take a guess and say his name's Dennis, and Dennis, the security guard, just sits there all day.
Yeah.
He's probably like either a minor god or like he's a demigod that's immortal. And this is just what he does all day. He gets excited when he gets a new book.
Oh, yeah. I guess, he might just be immortal who sees through the mist or something like a Rachel Elizabeth Dare situation.
He's on the Olympus's payroll.
Yeah.
But he gets a drachma, so I guess that's a good thing.
Yeah, I guess he could use that. Then he must be like a demigod or something like that, because otherwise a drachma would be useless garbage to him.
Well, I mean, I feel like that would be the same thing for Sally. Like, Percy Jackson's like, thanks, Mom, for doing my laundry, like, flicks a drachma. She's like, what can I do with this?
Thank you for this outdated coin.
You know what this reminds me of, B? It reminds me of the scene in Jumanji where this would never happen again ever in a movie when the hunter guy goes into a gun store. And he starts getting guns, and he starts putting out all the pennies. It's like, oh, I don't need a background check. He just keeps handing out pennies.
That doesn't really translate now, does it? It hasn't quite aged.
No,
the best.
But that's what it reminds me of. It's that exact scene. Oh, man. But moving on, they all get into the elevator, and I love that they play Staying Alive. Do, 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 do.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
And Percy Jackson makes a weird observation that made me go, oh no. Was that he starts talking about Apollo being in like disco pants and stuff, like bell bottoms.
Yeah, he's like, suddenly I had this horrible vision of him in like a slinky silk outfit or something.
So now my new theory, B, is that Apollo is Davy Jones. Oh man, that's a lot to take in.
That's a lot going on. Anyway, yeah, again, that's like sort of like some fun like color added to the world that is like, even when scary things are happening in the plot, it is kind of nice to have like a funny little aside of like, oh yeah, this is what Percy would think, because he has like kind of that sense of humor where he'd be like, oh, I thought of this like dumb thing that kind of isn't very important to what's going on, but for whatever reason he thought of it.
Well, I like how you have like those scenes, like the elevator scenes in a lot of movies. You have like an action movie, and then they cut to like them in the elevator, like they're all like gun to the hilt, and they just have like adorable music. Though my favorite version of that is in Kick-Ass, when you have Hit Girl in the elevator and the music is diegetic and they're playing Bad Reputation, and then it starts building up and that becomes the whole like action thing. I thought that was so cool, but I digress. They get to Mount Olympus, and this place is deader than a graveyard. People are Audi 500.
Yeah, well, no one's there, obviously, which I guess they expected no one to be there. Well, almost no one's there.
Yes, I would imagine like they would want to fortify places, but then again, it's Mount Olympus. What do you need to fortify? So they make it to, I guess, where the council chamber is, and they meet an old familiar friend, B. And who would that be?
It's none other than Hestia just standing there like, hello, Percy, I've been expecting you. Like, she might as well be in a swivel chair, like spin around like, hello.
No, I have a feeling like she's in like a rocking chair, and she's just throwing, wood on the hearth. Creak, 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 creak.
Anybody who greets you with your full name is like trying to go for a power move. Anyone who just turns around and goes, hey, Percy Jackson, like, who does that?
Oh, hi there, Zachary Sokol.
Yeah, like, no one would do that unless they were trying to kind of have a weird flex, but, that's kind of what she did.
Okay, Bryce Kelly.
And then some real spooky stuff happens with Hestia, as we'll get into. So yeah, I guess Hestia's there for another spooky vision, because we haven't had enough of those, right? We need another.
B, Percy's there, and he turns to Annabeth. Hestia's just looking at me menacingly.
Yeah, basically. And then obviously,
And she does like the weirdest thing where she's like, Percy Jackson, look into my eyes.
I mean, that's kind of what happens. If you've ever seen Big Fish, that reminded me a lot of this scene where, like, you look into the eyes of the lady and then you see how you die. But in this case, like, he looks into the eyes of the lady and sees some other horrible stuff.
Well, I mean, that's kind of like a trope that happens of like you look into someone's eyes and you see horrible things. I always think of Nicolas Cage in Ghost Rider when he has the pendant stare where the person sees all their sins that they do and they get encrusted onto their eyes.
For some reason, I thought you were going to talk about the Wicker Man, not the bees scene. And I know that that's not even really related, but as soon as you said Nick Cage, that's what was conjured in my mind.
Oh, B, you want to hear a fun story about that particular movie?
Mm-hmm.
That movie, me and my friends did it for our news broadcasting class. Like we did a shot-for-shot remake of it.
Oh my God.
And we did the whole bee scene. We did a bunch of those scenes. We did the
you
part
know
where,
that Jacqueline and Joyce Robbins, who were in Unfortunate Events as the White-Faced Women, they were also in Wicker Man.
Yeah, well, I know.
Yeah. We talked to them a little bit when we interviewed them. It was really funny.
Oh, I know, B. That sounds so amazing. But we did the scene where Nicolas Cage is in the bear costume and punches somebody. We did that.
Wait,
and
where
then
did you get a bear
part where
costume?
We had a bear costume.
Okay, I don't want to ask.
Don't question it. But then what ended up happening is we also did the whole sacrifice scene. We actually, I green screened my friend Paul into a gigantic Wicker Man, and the whole show went out. 3,000 people saw it. We got in trouble, but not for the episode, like child murder, people being punched in the face.
That's fine.
The thing that really got it, B, was that someone said, no.
Was copyright?
Someone said, that was not even in our segments at all. They said the word cake, which I guess means it's a drug reference to something. And that was, oh no, we can't have this. How dare you say this in our show?
Wait, they said the word cake?
Cake, yeah.
Was it in the context of a drug reference, or were they just talking about the food?
No, they were like, hey, everyone come to our party. We got cake.
What?
And they thought it was a drug reference.
So
that's what we got in trouble for. Yeah, it hurts my brain.
Yeah, that pretty much sums up public school, doesn't it? It's just kind of like a microcosm.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I guess child murder and burning someone alive is okay, but cake's
do you ever
not.
just like put up with horrible authority figures who have like bad standards? That's kind of a metaphor for sure.
I suppose, yeah.
Which I guess is kind of relevant to this chapter too, with authority figures not listening to people.
Well, Percy Jackson has a horrible vision too with this, doesn't he? He actually sees
it's less
some
of a vision
spooky
and
dream
more of
sequence.
A memory of the past, but not his own memory.
For some reason, I thought like Hestia, goddess of the hearth, like she can see events through fires. Maybe that might be the case. Like she can actually see these visions.
Maybe. I don't know if there would always be a fire in every situation that they were in, though, because it showed them throughout different like vignettes and scenes and stuff. So I think it's just like, I don't know why she would have that power. Is there a reason? If you guys know, tell us why she would have that
she's also
specific
one of the
power.
oldest gods ever, so she probably just has these powers.
So yeah, she's just like, I seen some stuff. I was there. Hestia be seeing some stuff all the time.
Hey, Percy, check out this. Ah, my eyes. And what we see is a young Luke, a young Thalia meeting a young Annabeth. Like we actually get the prequel scene of this.
Yeah, so this is pretty freaking heartbreaking. Also, like, adds to the weird dynamic of, like, okay, so Annabeth kind of loves Luke, but also, like, sees him as, like, an authority figure, and that's kind of weird that, like, when they first meet, he's, like, older than her, so he's sort of, like, this older brother kind of energy, and is like, hey, kid, you're pretty strong and smart, or whatever, and you could tell that, like, she just, like, latches onto that because she had just run away from home and everything. It's all very tragic. It's very Island of Misfit Toys, what goes on here.
I think of it more like the Lost Boys in the sense of like Luke's like Peter Pan.
Right, they don't have parents or whatever. I mean, it's the same idea though of like they don't have any place to be, so they're kind of like all misfits together, like that kind of idea of like, oh, we have a found family.
Oh no, Annabeth, don't go to Pleasure Island. Yeehaw! Yeehaw!
I love in the Island of Misfit Toys how it's just like that weird spooky lion with the wings, who I forget his name. He has like King Moonracer. Wow, I just pulled that out of nowhere. King Moonracer, the weird lion griffin creature, whatever he is like, you're not welcome here. You're not toys. And they're like, oh great, we're misfits even among the misfits. Anyway, that's kind of Annabeth, Luke, and Talia, is that they kind of are misfits among the misfits, because even among demigods, they don't fit in.
Well, yes, and I find this to be a really powerful scene. I actually really enjoy it. Like, again, before Luke became evil, he has a very interesting backstory. Does it help if he's evil? No, but like prior to him being evil, before he gets corrupted, like this scene's so powerful. He even gives Annabeth her knife, which seems like a very like, oh, we always think of Annabeth always having a knife. Well, here's the reason.
Right, that's like an important part of her character. Yeah, like that obviously someone had to give that to her. And like the whole backstory of like specifically that relating to like being a wise fighter or whatever and like representing her sort of cunning, like, oh, you know, you can really find someone's weak points with wait, hold on a second. That's like a really I hope that that's not foreshadowing. I just realized.
I was about to say that, but it's like, well, in a lot of stories with tropes, if the villain gives a hero a knife or any type of weapon, chances are that would be their undoing, wouldn't it be?
Yeah, but also specifically, I think. Hold on, I have to find what Luke says because it's like some real spooky stuff.
This weapon is your life.
Knives are only for the bravest and quickest fighters, Luke explained. They don't have the reach or power of a sword, but they're easy to conceal and can find weak spots in your enemy's armor. It takes a clever warrior to use a knife. I have a feeling you're pretty clever. So, kind of interesting though that you're like weak spot, and then there's a lot of like discussions of weak spots and vulnerabilities, and you know, now Luke obviously had to fall into the river Styx in order to like subsume Kronos or whatever, so he has a weak spot, and then so does Percy, so there's a lot of discussion of that. So now I'm thinking, like, does somebody take this knife and stab Luke and or Percy? Like, I feel like they're making a big deal of this weapon, but maybe I'm just, I don't know, seeing something where there isn't something.
So this is what I'm going to say. I've been watching a lot of things on writing, but also a lot of things on Brandon Sanderson. He talks about something that's interesting about this. Like, if you want to get a foreshadowing across, what you would like to do, you should do, is you should try to incorporate it at least 3 times within the story and have it like subtle hints in that way for it to
Right.
mean something. Well, the last couple chapters we've been talking about the blind spot.
Right, because yeah, this might be like a little too late if it was just like all of a sudden like, by the way, this knife is important, which like it hasn't been. If anything, Percy's sword has been more emphasized as an important weapon. So like,
Well, so here's the thing though, when it comes to Annabeth's knife, throughout the story it's just been a knife, but now they've incorporated it in this way where it has weight to it, even though it's just a knife. Yeah.
it represents a lot, even if it's not more magical or whatever, but it has like a very significant emotional meaning for Annabeth and like her connection to Luke and everything.
So Annabeth may or may not have to shank somebody, or may not be something that, you know, again, there's the trope of like the person giving a weapon to another person, that weapon becomes the undoing of the villain. Like that's something that's very common.
That would be very satisfying if Luke got stabbed by that knife, especially considering all of like the weird hemming and hawing that Annabeth has done throughout the books of like making excuses for him.
When that just solidify, it's the old classic trope of like Annabeth is holding both Luke and Percy in her hands, and they're both slipping, and she has to make a choice between who she saves.
Right, that's true.
It's exactly like that. That's like the ultimate solidification of like where her loyalties lie.
Yeah, I feel like there must be some sort of significance there. Maybe I'm totally wrong and you're just like feeding into my own like fan theory that actually has nothing to do with anything. But I feel like it wouldn't have been mentioned unless it was significant. But
No, B, as I like roll the board with all the pins and notes on them. No, why would I do that to you?
yeah, so like again, there have been examples where I've actually gotten stuff right and guessed things right, and other times have been totally off. So who knows?
Who knows?
Who knows what's going to happen with this knife? But either way, the scene is important regardless of the knife. It's important to sort of like drive home more of like Annabeth's connection to Luke and all of that stuff and the weird jealousy. And then there's another moment where Percy's like, oh, you're just concerned about Luke again. And, you know, all of that same stuff. The way they've been talking to each other for the past several books.
But the difference though with here is that Percy Jackson drops it so quickly that it was like refreshing. Oh my God, they're not going to have a fight about this because it's not as important as it is right now.
Right. Yeah, because so much is going on. He's like, I guess I can't be petty about your ex-boyfriend or whatever. I mean, it's not really her ex-boyfriend, but like essentially.
So for me, I like this idea of a vision because Percy Jackson has all these visions, but in the end, he only is away for literally a second before he collapses. And I like that when you get information like this where you see it through Percy's eyes and it's not like a dream sequence. It's like this could be like a real vision, or it could be a manipulation. Like we don't know which is which, and I like that. And I like that we get this information.
It's weird because sometimes visions are so straightforward and I'm like, oh, obviously they're trying to represent this. And then other times I'm like, why is this significant to the plot? And then it like comes back in a way I didn't expect. So I'm not entirely sure what we were supposed to take from that. I guess that's the whole point, though. We're supposed to be in Percy's shoes and being like, oh, I keep being bombarded with these images of like different things happening to my friends in the past and present and future, and I have no way of like assigning significance to them or knowing what they mean.
There's that, and also Hestia also spills Percy's beans about the curse of Achilles, and people have different reactions to it.
Well,
and
like, she says that, and Hermes says that, so they both kind of blow up his spot a little bit.
Oh no, they put him on blast. Boom, boom. But I like that, Hestia's like this, and even Annabeth doesn't know how to deal with this. Everyone else is like whispering, like, what is she talking about? That can't be true. And this is where things go from good to bad to worse, as guess who shows up but Hermes, god of messengers.
Hermes, and he has all sorts of issues, which makes sense, because he is Luke's dad, and like father, like son.
Don't you mean Father Jerkface?
Yeah. He kind of was like a bit of a weenie before, I guess. He kind of helped Percy last time we saw him, so it is weird for him to show up, and now he's just mostly annoying.
He gave him those vitamins that turned him into not a guinea pig anymore. So he has a plus in my book a little bit. He also gave him the winds and the thermos and that cool lunchbox. But then again, this is what I was thinking about reading this chapter for this week, B, which is that this chapter really shows how infallible the gods are. They can be angry, they can be jealous, they can be pitiful, unlike, other gods. Like, how we always consider God to be a man with like a big white beard. This is not the case at all, and this is why I think the Greek gods are so fascinating, because they can have very human emotions and still be attached to the world and still have thoughts and feelings. And I find that to be so interesting in my perspective of how it comes to like mythology.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of interesting whenever we interact with a god, because I always forget how powerful they are, I guess, and at the same time I also forget how petulant they can be, because that's kind of the whole point of this series, is that even if a character is a god, their like personality isn't infallible, so they can like have their own weird petty emotions and things.
See, but that's so interesting to me, because you always think about like beings with immense power. Like a lot of the times, like I've been rereading The Golden Compass. I won't get into that book without spoiling things, but
there's a scene there.
There's a lot going on there, but like there's a lot of things when it comes to people with like higher powers. Like they're either like they know everything and they're perfect, or they're broke, like don't know what to do
or something. Because he's supposed to be
the one thing about
Gandalf
god is like he's technically not a god, he's an angel. There's a whole lore about this.
Well, okay, but he's like, you know what I mean? He's like divine in origin as opposed to just magic and strong.
I like that when it comes to anything that has power, usually there's always going to be a human element to it, unless obviously it's an extraterrestrial thing. Like you don't know what other things are doing. But like here, I find it so fascinating. This is what Rick Riordan does really well at, is showing that gods can be powerful. But then Percy Jackson keeps pulling on the cord. It's like talking about May, talking about Luke, and this is where he almost wants to kill Percy, even though it shouldn't bother him because he's lived thousands of years, had many children's.
Right, like yeah, it shouldn't. It's because in other ways we have seen characters who have like lived for a long time and dealt with a lot of, like, for lack of a better word, trauma, and they're actually kind of jaded to it. Like a good example is like Chiron, where he's not often really invested in a lot of emotional stuff because he's just so like
he's used to all his people
these bad
dying.
things happening. But it's kind of interesting that for some reason Hermes would be so hurt about what happened to Luke, when it's like a lot of times gods don't seem to be super invested in what happens to their demigod children. Like they're kind of like, oh well, you're like alienated from me, like we're not really a family in the traditional sense.
No, but then again, here's the thing, it's like it makes you think that Hermes is trying the best that he can, but even he's told Percy, it's like gods have only certain limits when it comes to like with their children. Like I can't have a normal life. Luke can't have a normal life. Percy, you can't have a normal life with your dad. I mean, you've seen all your brothers and sisters and how apparently you're the favorite even though you're his newest. Like there's things like that, which for me I find so fascinating about Percy Jackson, in that sense of just, you can, a god can be pitiful, and like do things, but still like I know you're invincible, but I can't kill you. But mark my words, if I could, I would.
Yeah, I feel like Percy keeps having like these weird close calls with gods, right? He had an interaction with Hades not too long ago where he was like, I would kill you if I could. And then he barely slips away. And then again, it's like with Hermes where they're like, oh, you're like too powerful and it like wouldn't work out. But I would kill you because I'm mad at you for like these kind of petty reasons. And it's like, it's so weird that they're like so strong and powerful as gods and they should like have some sense of perspective because they've been around for so long, but they actually are still so caught up in like power plays and like holding things against people and like weird grudges that don't even totally make sense. You know, I mean, he has a grudge against Annabeth like for kind of no reason. I mean, they're well, we don't really know actually.
We don't know what the grudge is, but most likely because Annabeth was probably sweet on Luke. He like, why didn't you? I don't like to use the word, but it's like, why didn't you like woo him
Why
to
you
not
save
be a
him?
terrible person?
Yeah, exactly. Which is like kind of really messed up and like borderline misogynistic in a way where it's like you, the wonderful woman in his life, should have made him not evil by being so good that you persuaded him from being evil. And it's like, that's not her responsibility to save garbage men. Like, that's not anybody's job.
No, the only job that it requires is Luke making those choices. It's like, oh man, maybe I can show to Annabeth. No, he's not going to be like that. He's going to be like, I hate my dad. You're my fault. And I hate everything, and I don't have to consult Annabeth about this. Like, this is where, you know, the blood starts to boil a little bit. And, of course, Hermes is also there to deliver some messages, and each message is worse than the next. B, what are those messages?
Well, one is a message from Annabeth's mom wherein she says, try one of the plans. What is it, Plan 26 or something?
Yeah,
Which
Plan
I guess
26.
is one of the plans on
Daedalus' laptop.
which we'll get into later. We don't actually know what it is yet, but it's bad, basically. It's a last-ditch effort kind of plan.
They're going to shoot celestial bronze nukes into the air. Got it.
And then another message he sends is the message also from Annabeth's mom where it's just like, stay away from my daughter, which is kind of hilarious. That is just like directed to Percy like, hey, buddy, listen.
B, you know what would be even funnier? If like Hermes like walked up to Percy and just slapped him. Oh, that was also from Athena?
That would, yeah, like a, what are those called? Howlers from Harry Potter, where it's just it's delivering the emotion too. It's like, that's from her. Oh, and this one's from Ares, and it's just like a punch in the face, like.
Yeah, exactly.
And this one's from Zeus, and it's like a lightning bolt. It's like, wow, all of them?
And then Hermes just punches him in the face. My nose. Oh, that one was for me. That was special delivery.
Yeah, no, that was free of charge. You didn't have to pay for priority shipping for that one.
Oh, I think that I found the package lost in the mail. He hits him again. Oh, man.
Yeah. Oy vey. That is very funny, though. I really, like, wish I could sometimes, like, animate my mind's eye, like, sort of images of funny things happening in Percy Jackson of just silly interactions with characters.
My brain just works like, okay, we got Hermes. Okay, I can make male jokes. What type of male jokes can I make?
Through rain or sleet or snow or giant titans.
Would it be funnier if, like, Miss O'Leary was up there and trying to chase Hermes around? Because she's a dog and he's just a glorified mailman. It's
true. Yeah. That's a pretty good gag as well. That's definitely something that would be in a musical adaptation of this. If Joe Tracey and Robert Kiki could have made this into a musical, that definitely would be a gag that they would put in there.
Oh, yeah, and he would look like a mailman. He would look like...
for sure.
The guy from
He would
Cheers.
look like Cliff Clavin.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, what you see here, fun fact about this, Percy, is I hate you.
With John Ratzenberger reprising his role.
As Hermes. I'm down for that. What
Honestly,
are you talking
that's
about?
pretty good.
That guy's
That's
still
pretty
kicking.
good casting.
So we had that one, and then we had one from...
Oh yeah, and your mother said to warn you that you're on your own. You must hold Manhattan without the help of the gods. As if I didn't know that. Why they pay her for the wisdom... her to be the wisdom goddess, I'm not sure. I love that he implies that she gets a paycheck. I do like his sense of humor.
Like I said before, all of them are getting worse, and it's so much fun that each message...
I think those are mainly all of the messages.
Yeah, and
he
it
gives
goes
them.
back to the old saying, don't shoot the messenger, even though the messenger can turn you into a pile of stamps.
But if he's being annoying, you might. Well, he's here.
I guess he's helpful. Though, again, while this is happening, George and Martha are fighting with Percy. Why didn't you get me a rat? Why didn't you do this?
Which is hilarious because like they had met him one time. Like, what is he, their personal rat fetcher now? By the way, since we're talking about George and Martha, I mentioned it last episode. I'm pretty sure that the George and Martha I mentioned way back when we first met these characters, the characters in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, they were actually named after George and Martha Washington, who then you were thinking that that's where their names come from. So in the end, that's where all their names come from, is from the Washingtons. Yeah, so it's basically the same thing. Or I don't know, they're named after the hippos.
So,
I
what
guess.
you're telling me is we have all the answers and none of the answers at the exact same time.
Yes, exactly. Either it's like a reference to like some really sad piece of literary fiction, or it's a reference to historical characters for some inexplicable reason, or it's a reference to a children's book about hippos. Those are the options.
Or my option number 16 was they're actually Rick Riordan's grandparents. He just wanted to put them in the book.
Right, and they happen to be just old people names, and it's a coincidence. Who knows? They are a good sort of comedic relief where they're just kind of like chiding him, but he does end up sort of being helped by them, as the chapter implies, because they're like, oh, BT dubs, he has the curse of Achilles, so like you can't kill him, Hermes, even though you're mad at him.
Yes, and this is where like Hermes is just like, he kind of yeets out of there in like an angry flash and kind of leaves everyone to their own devices because guess what? The worst is about to happen, B. Whereas they're like listening and they don't hear any New York traffic, which is the most scary thing you can't hear.
Oh God, this part was like actually chilling because I imagined like how freaked out I would be if that happened, and I just actually kind of want to read the passage because it's truly creepy the way that it's described. I don't hear anything, Annabeth said. That was the problem. Even from this height, I should have heard the noise of the city. Millions of people bustling around, thousands of cars and machines, the hum of a huge metropolis. You don't think about it when you live in New York, but it's always there. Even in the dead of night, New York is never silent. But it was now. I felt like my best friend had suddenly dropped dead. What did they do? My voice sounded tight and angry. What did they do to my city?
That's so chilling.
Oof. That's so horrifying to imagine because, like, if you've ever been to New York, that it's like so true that you kind of like drown out that noise. Like, it's funny because I like live in the suburbs where most of the time in the dead of night there isn't a lot of like ambient noise, but when you're in the city, there really is like no escaping, like just general machinery noise, trucks in the distance. Like there's no silence when you're there. So trying to imagine like being in the Empire State Building, which is like the center of it all in the middle of Manhattan, and everything just being silent is so creepy to picture.
Well, no, it's even creepier because they like even look down and they notice that there's no cars moving. No one has crashed their cars. Like
and everyone's like frozen in place. Yeah.
It reminds me of, I was actually just watched this movie for the first time yesterday. So this is a fresh reference for you guys, is the movie Dark City. They have the exact same scene where everyone goes to sleep. All the cars turn off. People just like pass out. And it's the exact same type of aesthetic of just an entire city going to sleep instantaneously, which is horrifying concept, but also here is an interesting concept because now it means that you can have a full-blown war and not worry about people dying or having casualties in that sense.
Right, that's true. I didn't even think about that. So yeah, the humans are not involved at all. There's no like weird, like, oh, the mist explains it all away or anything like that. There's just like no humans involved. So that makes sense. It kind of gets them out of the way and allows for all the magic stuff to happen.
For me, that's like a chef kiss for like, okay, we don't have to worry about collateral damage in that sense. Like people are sleeping. But I guess that's like a new thing. It's like you have to like avoid people now rather than avoiding people that like can actually see you. You have to avoid like smushing people, I guess, when you're battling.
Oh yeah, I guess who are just standing because they're not going to jump out of the way because they're asleep. See, yeah, that might actually make it harder, especially for Percy's side, who like don't want to harm casualties. Obviously, Kronos and Morpheus and stuff don't care.
Of course, this kind of fulfills the first part of the prophecy about an endless sleep, as we find out that Morpheus has put everyone to sleep.
Right? Yeah. So that's that.
You
on
got that one right. I was actually surprised about.
We kind of guessed that already, though, right? Because of the interaction he had with Grover. It's kind of implied.
I'm really happy for you, but you actually got that right, and I was like, I don't want to say anything.
I wasn't sure if I had gotten that right, but I.
You did. You said like endlessly.
Remember.
Like, what if Morpheus puts people to sleep? Like a giant group of people.
Okay, so yeah, I did. It's just been a while since I made that prediction, and then obviously, we interact with Grover, who kind of confirms it that he was like asleep in the park for a while, so.
And he was saving his power for a bigger thing.
Exactly. So there was a lot of foreshadowing. I don't want too much of a pat on the back because they kind of hand-fed it to us, but I'll take what I can get.
You take what you get, and you get some more. Beep. So
I thought you were going to start singing Complicated by Avril Lavigne.
I don't even know that song.
And you turn it into... Wait, you don't know Complicated by Avril Lavigne? The modern classic?
No, I don't. No, I think Avril Lavigne, did she do Skater Boy?
Yes.
Okay, then I think I know of her.
Yeah, she's the Canadian with the tie who then apparently died and then was replaced with a double.
Clone, yeah.
Yes.
I know exactly what you're talking about here. But B, now the scariest thing is happening. The whole city is asleep. Now it's time for the invasion to start.
And they're by themselves with kind of no help from the gods. And some of the gods are actively mad at them. So that's great and good.
Good job, Percy Jackson. You should have thought about this 3 books ago.
We saved the whole city. Yay. And it just cuts to the city on fire.
Oh, no. Oh, this is terrible, B. Ugh. Well, B, what is the name of the next chapter?
The next chapter is chapter 10 already. I buy some new friends. I don't know what that means at all. I can't even... What? I buy some new friends? I don't know. I can't even think of what that would mean.
When it comes to buying people in that sense, if it's well, you can maybe get some monsters, you buy them off with drachmas, as we've seen, or you figure something out.
Right, that was kind of what I was thinking, but I didn't really think of any specific example of something like that happening so far in the story.
Or maybe it's I buy friends, your friends are going to buy you some time. That's also a thing. Who knows?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure where the next chapter is going to be exactly. I can only sort of guess based on what just happened, but as far as the name, I don't know. I don't know what that means.
When it comes down to it, B, what do you think is going to start to happen now? Do you think we're just going to have a really long fight scene, or do you think it's going to be little skirmishes?
I mean, I don't think that, right? I think it's probably going to be some battle type stuff, and then retreating and more interactions with characters. Because also remember, this is the last book, so I feel like a lot of the characters who we haven't seen in a minute are going to reappear. We're probably going to eventually have another appearance from Rachel in some capacity. We're probably going to see Grover again. We're probably going to see Tyson again. All the old classics who...
Oh, here's a question for you. Do you think we're going to see Thalia?
Right, Thalia. We haven't seen Thalia in a hot minute, and all of the Hunters of Artemis, who Lord knows where they are. So we kind of need to check back.
You would think Thalia would be checking off a calendar when Percy Jackson turns 16?
Yeah.
Just in case?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know what specifics are going to go down exactly. I do have a feeling that obviously this book is going to end with them succeeding and defeating Kronos in some capacity, and maybe Luke is going to try to redeem himself but probably die, or maybe do kind of a combination of the two, that kind of thing. Probably a couple more beloved characters will die. That's kind of my general outline for what's going to happen in this book. But as far as the specifics of how the battles are going to go down, or what other weird mythological things they're going to exploit to win, I'm not exactly sure.
Now, B, I have the million drachma question for you. Hey, B.
Hey, Zach.
So I lost all of our passwords. My mom washed them in my jeans.
Why were they in your jeans?
Because that's where you're supposed to keep all your passwords, right?
On a piece of paper in your jeans?
Yeah, exactly.
That's probably the worst place to keep your passwords.
What is a good way to keep my passwords then?
Dashlane Premium combines unlimited password storage synced across all your devices with dark web monitoring and a VPN for Wi-Fi protection. It's the easy solution for autofilling passwords and personal information combined with advanced tools you'll never want to browse without. For 20% off Dashlane Premium, go to dashlane.com/camphalfblood and enter code CAMPHalfBlood.
Wow, because of that, I don't have to wear super big pockets anymore. I'm going to wear some short shorts. Thanks, B.
Mm-hmm.
They even bring it up in this chapter. Who do you think might be the spy?
Right, yes, because he looks at all of the campers and he's like, one of you is a spy. I don't know. Hold on. I think there was some vague hinting at it.
It's a whodunit, isn't it? Because it wouldn't be I was camper number 4. You never even knew my name.
Right, yeah. I don't think it would be that, because I think that totally removes any of the significance of there being a spy, but at the same time that might be very like a very interesting red herring where it's like we're all looking at characters that are meaningful, you know what I mean? Like whether it be Annabeth or Clarice or someone who we already know by name, but it might actually be a character we don't know. But in the meantime, it's sort of like a Monsters Are Due on Maple Street thing where everyone's getting like paranoid and accusing each other, but it was actually none of them.
Here's the thing though, it's like when it comes to like the spies, there's more weight to it if it's someone that you actually know.
Right, yeah. I don't think plot-wise it would be that meaningful if it was just some rando guy like, oh yeah, remember Jim? No, I don't remember Jim. I don't know, he was here. He was the spy. He's just this kid. I don't know. He's gone now. He wasn't very strong.
Or B, is it something like the Manchurian Candidate where it's a sleeper agent?
Right,
You
yeah.
have to say like a special term. Or maybe someone doesn't even know they're the spy. But have you ever thought about that? All that we know is that information is being passed around and that something probably like a scythe-like pendant or some sort of thing most likely is the thing that they're using to communicate.
As I looked at their faces, all these campers I'd known for so many summers, a nagging voice whispered in my mind, one of them is a spy. But I couldn't dwell on that. They were my friends. I needed them. Then I remembered Kronos' evil smile. You can't count on friends. They will always let you down. Annabeth came up to me. So, that's the thing. I think that's trying to emphasize that it's probably someone he considers at least a friend.
Remember B about what we talked about last time about Percy Jackson? What is Percy Jackson's fatal flaw?
It's not hubris, right? That's Annabeth. So, loyalty, I guess, right? Or like his loved ones. Yeah, so that would make sense if the spy was like someone he loved, because that would like make it much harder for him to fight them. I hope it's not Annabeth. That doesn't really make sense. But like she does love Luke a lot still and has like weird alliances to him.
Before I get you down like a tandem, like it could be Annabeth, but there's also other people that it could be too. Because love is a very big term, and you're assuming it could be love, it could be friendship, it could be many things.
Right. I mean, she's just had such a long-standing like thing for Luke where like she's making excuses for him regardless of how terrible he is and all the stuff that he does. There's always like a moment where Annabeth
that seems like a little too obvious, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's like so obvious that I kind of don't even want to guess that, but like that's what comes to mind. Other than that, again, Clarice feels obvious too because she's so like aggressive that like, oh, of course she'd be the spy, and she's like, again, has been so weird about helping them because of some arbitrary thing about keeping the loot of battle and whatever. Like, why would she make a big deal of that when everything's at stake? Like that does seem silly, but also like in a way that makes me feel less like she's the spy because she's not really concerned with other people. She's just concerned with her own like petty disagreements with people. She's not, she doesn't care about other important things going on. She just wants like approval from her dad mainly. So I don't know. I don't really know who it would be other than that. I mean, there's the Stoll brothers are kids of Hermes, like Luke is. So like, would they have like an alliance to Luke somehow? There's a lot of questions. I don't know.
I mean, there's plenty of answers and plenty of questions, though Percy Jackson is asking the wrong questions when he should be thinking of the right ones. Because it's hard to root out a spy. You have to catch him either in the act or catch him on a lie.
Yeah, I don't know.
And that's what I'm going to leave it to because it's something to ponder about, isn't it?
Yeah, we'll see.
B, I'm the spy. Oh, God.
It's been
me the entire time. It's as if they set up an entire arc for a character and then made him the spy just to kill him in the movie. Ha, ha, ha. No one stupid would do that in a movie. Oh, wait. Ha, ha. Not gonna say anything because I told people that I wouldn't talk about a movie. B, do you want to read some listener emails?
Okay, so yeah, we got a few emails and reviews this week, but first we kind of wanted to touch on something about, I guess, the correspondence we've been getting recently. Why don't you explain what I'm talking about, Zach?
Yeah, B, so to our listeners, we've actually gotten a few emails from people asking, hey, you haven't read my emails on the show. And upon further investigation, some of the emails, since Google has changed their thing with like their email system, is that a lot of your guys' emails are actually going into our spam folder for some weird reason. Like it's something that we don't normally check, but as I started checking it, we have like a couple that have gone through since they've changed things. Like my whole system of like getting files and stuff has completely changed. So we wanted to apologize for that. In the coming weeks, we're going to start reading those emails. There's only a few of them.
Yeah, just double checking the spam folder just to make sure.
Yes, make sure, and also make sure that maybe it bounced to a different email if you didn't get like a return to sender. That kind of tends to happen sometimes. But through the next coming weeks, once we're reading, we'll incorporate some more of those, just so we don't have like a super email of just more of the correspondence than there is Percy Jackson content. So be prepared to hear your emails.
Right. Yeah, we're gonna try to space it out if we do have like a bunch we haven't read. But in general, Zach checks the email, but he's just gonna kind of be more diligent of double checking the spam stuff so we don't miss anybody, because we don't want to miss anybody. We want to get back to everyone who takes the time to write an email.
Yes, and thank you everyone that kind of pointed that out to us. Like we don't ignore people in that sense. It's just it was technology this time, not like, oh man, we hate your email, man, it's so bad. No, it's not like that at all. We love hearing from all of you guys, and we're gonna start reading those emails as soon as humanly possible. So you ready, B, to read some emails?
So yeah, we have a bunch of emails and a bunch of reviews to get to this week. So our first email from this week is from Sabrina, perhaps the Teenage Witch, I don't know, who says, "Hey guys, just wanted to remind you of my appreciation of this podcast, as well as the hilarious tangents, and also thank you for looking back on Razor Scooters," laughing emoji. I was cracking up when B said that the handles would always make your hands smell weird, because that was totally a thing that I always experienced. And did you guys ever try to grab the handles and whip the base of the scooter around so that I made a full rotation? Well, not riding, of course, but if you weren't careful, it would completely destroy your shins. Of course. Real 90s kids remember doing that with your Razor Scooters. I don't even think I had a Razor scooter. I had like some weird off-brand Razor scooter.
So for me, B, and all the other 90s kids, we didn't call it a Razor scooter. We called it the Ankle Buster 7000.
Yeah, basically that's what it was. It was a metal disaster. They were also so flimsy. I totally like completely crashed so many times. You've seen the hills that I live upon. Can you imagine riding a Razor scooter on that? That is not safe.
Well, yes, B, I would imagine that, because it would be so ripping and tubular, because it would be so rad when you like fall into the lake with all the dead bodies.
Until you like hit a patch of gravel and then veer into your sister, and both of you have giant gashes in your leg.
Oh man, is it gonna be like because you're twins? Like if you get like a paper cut, Taryn gets a paper cut?
Yeah, no, we're both symmetrically scarred. Anyway, but yeah, distortions. And then you mentioned hoverboards, and I thought about the kids nowadays are growing up with, we're not even that old. I'm 22, but why did I feel so ancient when someone at work asked me if I knew TikTok? And I replied, yes, of course, the hit song by Kesha, a classic. Anyway, it was a fun little trip back to the early 2000s, so thanks. Also, I'm not 100% sure, but you were questioning Percy's decision to have his weak spot in the small of his back, but I think he thought it'd be a good spot since it is well protected once they put on their traditional Greek battle armor with a chest plate that covers the back too, but it's probably also symbolic, as you mentioned, since Percy's fatal flaw is that he's too loyal to his friends, and one of them might someday try and backstab him. Yeah, I think that both are kind of resonant there. Metaphorically important and also pragmatically useful. On that happy note, thanks. Keep up the good work. Keep horsing around. Oh, I like that one. We should sign off that way.
Oh, that's actually kind of fun and adorable. But, yeah, no, thank you so much for that lovely message.
Yeah, they would make your hands smell weird, those Razor scooters. I don't know what it was, plastic. I don't know. It was the weird plastic that was like made in Taiwan or something, like degrading beneath your dirty little child hands. I don't know.
No, B, it was like that weird type of plastic. It's like a foam plastic type of thing. It's like it's supposed to cushion the impact. So gross. Which it was still gross, but I remember these.
It like absorbed a gross smell. Anyway, it was very disgusting. I'm glad that this was a universal experience and it wasn't just me.
That's it, B. I'm going to go get a scooter now. We got to scoot out of here. So, B, I got an email. This is from Rebecca that says, sequel to a musical, you say? I've been so excited for this, but also it's like, I had the oh yeah moment. Hey, Zach, as a fellow Lindsay Ellis subscriber, you should know that there's a sequel to Phantom of the Opera called Love Never Dies. It's truly terrible. Christine and the Phantom bump into each other 10 years later.
Wait, do they bump into each other at Whole Foods? Like, wait, does the Phantom go outside?
Wait, okay. No, B, I have seen this musical before, and I totally spaced about it because I never put two and two together. But you want to hear the fun thing about this as well? So they bump into each other, and Christine has a son that is, drumroll please, 10 years old.
Oh, of course.
See, I always get this musical confused. Like, yes, at the time I was probably really blanking on it because there is a Robert Englund, Freddy Krueger himself version of not this one, but they have like a modern day version of Phantom of the Opera where he works at a carnival, I believe.
What?
So I kept getting it confused. Yeah, there's a modern version of it.
There's so much going on. I've never even seen like any adaptation of Phantom of the Opera or version of it. So like I can't speak to any of this.
It's funny because in this chapter, maybe remember an actual musical sequel that was a movie that was Saturday Night Fever. You know, that movie, B?
That movie, which I also haven't seen the original of, but continue.
Well, there's a musical sequel to that movie called Staying Alive. And it
Which
was
I'm sure is not good.
It was directed by Sylvester Stallone himself.
What?
And his brother did all the music.
I feel like you're just saying random things and hoping that I don't fact check you because I don't know why that would make any sense.
That's
Why
Sylvester Stallone did the movie.
Stallone? What was he do? Wasn't he busy?
And his brother Frank Stallone did the music. And that music's kind of kicking. It's great, yeah. But I kind of remember that. Like, I had that moment. Like, you're probably right about that. And yeah. I got to go see Cats on Thursday with Lindsay Ellis doing a QA. And that was so much fun because it was like Rowdy Cats. Oh, God, it was so great. B, you want to read the next email?
Yeah, nice short and sweet one from Sophie who says, Hallmark adapt Horsing Around. Christmas movie based on Horsing Around. I will not elaborate. I love that you sent this just in like all lowercase. There's just such powerful energy to this email, you know? You refuse to elaborate. It's just like, listen, I have good ideas.
B, it sounds so sinister, like I will not elaborate as they're writing it and they're genetically making Centaur. Well, what would if this is going to be the Christmas movie, what would the Christmas sequel be? I feel like...
Wait, we were talking about this, right? Because it would be like Horsing Around to Sleigh Bells. And it's like so the dad and the centaur are now married, but like the centaur is really excited to learn about human traditions and Christmas, but the dad is disillusioned with Christmas. And so then everyone in the small town has to come together to teach him the meaning of Christmas. That's like every Hallmark movie. There's usually a small town and like someone who's like lost touch with how they feel about Christmas and usually like a businessman, you know?
Yeah, no, this reminds me of the movie Pottersville. B, do you know about this movie?
Wait, what? Oh, Pottersville? Oh, wait, is that a sequel to It's a Wonderful Life?
It kind of is a sequel to It's a Wonderful Life, but it's like a remake where...
Wait, I think I've heard of this. I heard it was really bad.
B, Michael Shannon. Do you remember this man, right? This man has a really...
Oh, he has a real scary face. With the wall eyes, he's like looking at two places at once. It's kind of like Rosie.
Okay. I love Michael Shannon. He's such a good actor.
He's a good actor. He scares the crap out of me, but yes, he's a good actor.
So Michael Shannon is kind of like the Jimmy Stewart of the town. And
it
turns out
he's endearing? Like Jimmy Stewart is totally the same? No, not at all.
So one day he comes home early from working at the hardware store to find out that his wife and the sheriff of the town are secretly furries.
I have definitely heard a podcast review of this. I do listen to it occasionally. Like, I listen to a lot of Christmas podcasts. I must have heard this on Christmas Creeps. Have you listened to Christmas Creeps? It's a very good podcast.
I don't listen to Christmas Creeps. But so what ends up happening, B, is he gets drunk and puts on a Bigfoot costume and starts to pretend he's Bigfoot to the town become super famous.
And what does this have to do with It's a Wonderful Life?
Because it's like A Wonderful Life. It's like when he's not there, his Bigfoot, people kind of forget and appreciate what he did. And he kind of sees the same thing.
There's so much going on there.
It's such a great movie. I love it. Oh my God.
We're all allowed to have opinions, but I don't know if there's an episode of Christmas Creeps from last year. Or from a couple of years ago. Yeah.
Oh man, it's such a great movie. I love it. It warms my heart that family man Michael Shannon is in a Christmas movie. Oh man. So we have one from Reed that says, "Hey, Zach and B. I just wanted to know when I first heard B's name, I thought it was B, B-E-E, like bee and puppy cat. Just look it up. Anyways, I love the podcast and look on Spotify for a Percy Jackson podcast and found you. Zach, I know you're reading this before B, so I just want to say that you are amazing at keeping in spoilers. I'm not. I'm 10 years old and I do not get any references you make at all. Fair enough.
It's okay. I'm 26 years old and I don't get any references he makes at all. So I think we're on the same page.
There are a
here.
few people like that listen to the show and like they send me messages and chuckle because they know who I am. They've been around me long enough to understand what I'm talking about. So, so some of my references are just for me. And sometimes if you get the reference, that's good. I'm like, we just did a Ready Player One review, right? I'm like, we've said this before. It's like I talk like how Ernest Cline writes.
Yeah, it's true. Just endless references. But you do it well.
It's still funny that watching B guess and get things somewhat wrong. By the way, I live in New York City on the east side like Percy Jackson. I feel like a half-blood right now to tell you. Also, as a 5th grader that reads all the books in 1 year, audiobooks, I want to find everything PGO online. That's how I found you. Also, in the first episode you did for The Last Olympian, you were talking about how Rachel is better than Annabeth for Percy, and I heard B's boyfriend yell, "She has a knife!" I laughed so freaking hard, you do not even know. Also, I really want to meet and greet in New York because I really want to meet you. I give this podcast all the stars. Your friendly neighborhood daughter of Iris, Reed.
Wait, did he say she has a knife? I don't remember that, but that's hilarious. He is very funny. I'm sure he said that. How did he know what happened in that chapter? Was he reading over my shoulder? Who knows? Who knows the context for why he knew what...
Well, the first episode was when we were there together.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you're right. You're right. That's probably what it was.
I think he might have been making the meme, I got a knife. No!
Oh, yeah, no. I got a knife. No! Yeah, no, we joke about that all the time. So it was probably a reference to that.
So thank you so much, Reed. And this is one of the emails that got into the spam folder. And I want to apologize for that. We weren't ignoring you at all. That's just what ended up happening. That's when the switch probably occurred. And on top of B and I, we want to apologize for the lateness of this email.
Okay, so this is from Elizabeth, who says, "Hi, here I am back again with an overly in-depth analysis that no one asked for, but I write anyway because I'm not writing dissertations. What is my identity really?" That's relatable. You remember when I graduated with a literature degree and then I immediately decided to start literature podcasts? Anyway, I've been reading these books with my younger sibling who struggles with reading, so to help them feel more confident, we read these major book series together and do a little talk over the phone, since I basically live on the other side of the country, about what we enjoyed, didn't enjoy, and he's never read the books, and I usually have. It's interesting perspective, a bit familiar to you guys. Lol, Zach, I get your pain. We did Harry Potter, and I had to mute the call so I wouldn't accidentally give stuff away. But now that we're doing the Percy Jackson multiverse, we are on Heroes of Olympus 3. I get what you two are saying, especially Zach. I read these books as they were coming out. I have a picture of me at a book signing for Battle of the Labyrinth. I grew up with these books, but as I read them now, recent college graduate, I feel differently about the story. Characters like Mr. D are kind of sympathetic because I too am a wine-loving, bitter person.
But not really. I actually see Luke as a lot grayer than I did as a kid when I flat out hated the boy. But what really drove me to dust off my email writing thumbs was your approach to shipping and romance in these novels. While I know you don't like ships, I hope you will humor me and my child development minor for a minute because I disagree. I think there is an intellectual stimulating conversation that can be had from somewhat as seemingly frivolous as shipping. Recently, I reread many YA/children's books, and as such, read many romantic tropes, but that really shocked me was how young the kids are versus how old they act in literature, specifically in terms of romance. And that in The Thing, I find most unrealistic in these high fantasy, sci-fi, dystopian books. So when we got to Percy Jackson, I was convinced that Percy / Annabeth were going to be the same. However, I was pleasantly shocked at how their age, Annabeth and Percy, do act both romantically but also otherwise. The book series PGA only spans from 12 to 16 for Percy and Annabeth and a few months older. Yes, I did research. 12 to 16 is one of the most developmental transitional periods in a human's lifespans biologically. This is when puberty hits. Sure, please, Zach, stop doing the voice. It startled me as I slammed on my brakes. I think I've already said that I don't do the nerd voice, right?
Yeah, we don't really do the nerd voice anymore, but I do sometimes hear it in my head
You do?
when Percy's being particularly tween like.
Are you being serious? That warms my nerdy heart.
Well, I mean, not even just your specific voice, but I kind of just picture him as being like a gawky, weird teen who says kind of awkward things, because that's what you do when you're 15. Ages experience significant emotional growth, keyword being growth. Growth is, by its very nature, slow and includes regression. So while you are shocked by how oblivious Percy and Annabeth are to each other, I'm not. At 15, 16, teens are just getting out of their, oh, I can hang out with someone of the opposite gender phase. It's so early in the relationship ready phase that most teens are not aware of their own feelings enough to be aware of someone else's. And so when you consider that's easier to see how seemingly slow and Percy and Annabeth are in whole relationship thing, especially when you think about how neither kid had much of a childhood anyway. So when you're trying to catch up to the developmental milestones it missed because you were running away at 7 instead of grasping trust versus mistrust, is it surprising that Annabeth trusts Luke so much? Even when he takes advantage of her in Titan's Curse, he's also the guy who took her in when she was a child. It's akin to a child who, even when their parents neglect them, they feel attached to them because it's their mom or dad. So at 7, she clings to Luke, and then Luke betrays her. That damages her already damaged ability to trust. Meanwhile, Percy is blessed with a goddess of a mother in Sally, but has Gabe as his only father figure for years, and this stunts his ability to trust as well. We don't know how old Percy is when Sally meets Gabe, at least I don't, but imagine he's young, less than 10, at least given that Gabe seems to have been around.
I imagine he's young, less than 10 at least. Given Gabe seems to have been around a while in The Lightning Thief, imagine being a young kid and imagine getting a father figure in your life only for him to be an abusive jerk. Studies show that children who witness abuse, we know that Gabe was never abusive to Percy's child abuse is far from a middle grade book, but spousal abuse is fine, I guess, are more likely to feel anxious in relationships, more cautious, and less trusting. So bam, you bring two kids, you've experienced trauma both magically and human with the inability to trust, and they seem to have a teenage crush on each other. You're mixing prior trauma, teenage angst, and general fear and distrust in a situation. Of course, they're all acting a little crazy. It's what teenagers exploring romantic feelings for the first time do, heightened by their own trauma and dialed up because they're in a fantasy book. I think that the last chapter may have seemed shipping heavy to you and something you too like to talk about, which is fine, it's your show, but I think there's some very interesting character moments that can be gleaned from them. The development of both Percy and Annabeth feeling comfortable enough to stop skirting around feelings because my feelings and each other's aren't just the real deal, the ramification of it, for the reasons stated above. Percy realizes that he thinks Annabeth is beautiful, but we don't get Annabeth's internal monologue, which is perhaps why it's harder to understand her and to get Percy's version of Annabeth, not Annabeth's version of Annabeth. Though her actions and dialogue we see her try to broach the topic of relationships too, she actually ignores Rachel and all of it, all Annabeth, actually does try to talk about them, and Percy's teenage boy typical say something that derails the conversation, but I think that's not a bad thing if anything's true to life. I think what makes this book characters feel more accurately to children is the fact that Rick Riordan was a teacher. He knows how teens act, and actually what I've enjoyed most about his books. The irrational pettiness, the naive of teenagers, just a part of development. I like that none of these characters are perfect, that my biggest problem with why everyone is too polished, these characters have flaws, and that's cool. Their relationships are flawed, and their choices are flawed, but so was I. Anyways, at this point, maybe I should go back to school and get a children's literature degree, and then we can match B.
Don't do it.
Oh, don't do it?
You'll never get a job. No, I'm roasting myself. But this was like a really great email.
It's still going.
I agree with... Oh, it's not over?
It's not over yet. I cut a lot of this email before sending it, but I know this is grossly long, so feel free to read as much or as little or none of this email on air. These are just a few ramblings. Love what you do, Liz. No, I love ramblings, and we have to apologize again because this is another one of those emails that got lost in the spam folder. And I think I know exactly when you were talking about this was probably before Percy and Nico went on their little adventure. I think this was such a really good email, especially with we're not experts at anything here when it comes to this show. I feel like when it comes to our show, we're actually very ignorant on some things and having
Well, I mean, that's like kind of the whole premise is I don't know a lot of stuff.
And I think when it comes to our show, like having the different perspectives of people that like study children and things, they have different insights compared to like me. I'm more theater-based, theatrical, and very like structure-based, and movies.
Though, I mean, like, I think I do come at the books in a similar way to the way that the person who wrote this email does, which is kind of interesting. Like, I don't know. I think we might sometimes get misconstrued when we say things like, oh, we don't care about ships. I do care about relationships in the Percy Jackson universe. I do care about how characters interact with each other. I do care about how romance reflects like the sort of inner world of the characters, or even, as you said, the sort of developmental place that a child is in. I mean, when I studied children's literature, we did talk a lot about how certain books are written with like the developmental milestones in mind of like, okay, this is how a teen would act as opposed to this is how a kid would act, or what they would find important, or something that they would need to like hear from an authority figure to like feel like they were valid or normal in some way. But yeah, I think that it's like an important distinction to make, that like when we say we don't care about ships, I think it's more like sort of the arguing of what ships are valid, if that makes sense. It's like we are not interested in saying, oh, well, Annabeth and Percy are the one true pairing and anybody else who prefers other things or trash or whatever. Even if you happen to, you know, think that Annabeth and Luke are good for each other, I might disagree with that, but I'm not going to be like, because that's just like not something that we're interested in arguing about, but like actually talking about the motivations of why characters act the way they act. I think we are interested in that. So I totally agree with your sentiments in this email.
So I totally agree with you with that, B. I think what people get kind of maybe get confused about when we talk about what we don't like ships is very similar to that, where it's like we're not going to like, you know, super fanboy, super fangirl, or just be like a super like fanatical about it.
Yeah, it's not about like the consumption of their relationships. Like we're not gonna like be like squealing like, oh my god, they're so cute or whatever. Like I'm not very interested in that.
No, because for us, you know, we're both adults. It may be contested if we're functional adults, but no, we're adults. We have adult relationships.
And it would be weird. I don't feel super comfortable making a big deal about the relationships of teenagers.
I'll say this, B, and this is going to be very blunt, like to people that listen to this, is like when it comes to relationships, we're both in our 20s and we're talking about children relationships, and it's like the problem though is like you're getting into like really weird territory where you're there's things you can talk about with kids relationships, and then there's things you do not want to talk about with kid relationships.
Right.
And for
like
us,
yeah, I'm not interested in deciding which characters are the cutest together or whatever. It's more interesting talking about like, okay, but why does Annabeth still have a thing for Luke even after he keeps endlessly hurting her? And like the email said, which made a very good point, and I think I've made this point to you, all of us have sort of come to the conclusion that she has her hangups with Luke because, I mean, this very chapter really illustrates it very
trauma
well.
bonding.
She has trauma. Yeah, like that she bonded with him specifically because she was like from a broken home and then found a new found family in Talia and Luke. So then she like came up with a lot of excuses and weird, complicated reasons for like having both love for them and grudges against them at the same time. And that's like, I mean, there's a lot of weird trauma going on with all the characters as we've talked about, and that's like has a lot to do with their motivations for how they act. But yeah, again, we're not interested in like necessarily, you know, deciding who's like the most valid as like a couple or what's the cutest, or even like, you know, when we say things like, oh, I like Rachel better, it's kind of more coming at it from a character perspective, like, okay, what would be most beneficial for a character like Percy.
So the way that we approach it in that sense, as I can remember this, is that we approach it as like, okay, this is the reasons why as a functional adult, Annabeth might not be the best for Percy, and this is why Rachel is like, when it comes to like, we're not going to talk about fan art, we're not going to talk about like fan fictions in those ways. It's like, when it comes to like pairing, and I think I'm going to put the hammer down on this a little bit. Is that okay, B? I'm about to say is that the only person that can truly say what ship is valid is Rick Riordan himself. Otherwise, we have no authority on it.
Yeah, exactly. But even then, it's like that. It's kind of not important, really, in the long run, like who they end up with or anything like that. But I am interested in like motivations, and that's kind of why I really liked this email.
Yes, and I agree with that.
That is something important, and again, developmental stuff too, of like kind of stepping back and going, obviously, you and I are adults. As we're rereading this, we're going, wait a second, this is not the way that I would have acted. Even if when we were respectively, you know, 15, 16 years old, whatever, if we hadn't acted that way, maybe other kids would have, because there's all sorts of different varying things of like trauma and experiences that change maybe the way you react to something.
So here's the thing, though. It's like we're looking at this as adults now. As a kid, I never really picked up on this stuff because it was either girls are icky or I was so like, oh my God, this is amazing. Oh God. Like I love relationships because again, you're looking at it from different perspectives as even in the email, during those times your brain changes in many different ways and you have your development cycles of going through puberty. And like probably as a kid reading this for the first time, I never even thought about that. I always just thought the story was going on. But though I'm sure as a teenager, like, oh man, this relationship stuff is awesome because, I'm not in a relationship. The closest I get to a relationship is holding hands with the girl or like going to see a movie. You know what my first date movie was? Was The Social Network.
That's hilarious. That's really not a good first. Well, did I ever tell you what the first date movie was between my mom and my dad?
What was it?
They went to go see Silence of the Lambs in theaters.
I mean, I see no problem with that.
So that's kind of a weird tone to set.
But like even with like that, like we don't have the answers for this stuff. Like I think what I've wanted to have on a show, like thinking of it now, is like when it comes to like these topics like shippings and talking about things like this, I feel like it would be more productive to get people that would know the stuff like an actual like person, like a child psychiatrist or someone that like knows how a kid thinks, or like just asking an adult and like, oh, so when we were kids, like, were we like this? And just asking people that know this stuff because neither of us had kids.
Everything that I've ever said on any Children's Lit podcast that I've done has come from a place of like what I've learned from Children's Lit from other people, and definitely like my
from experience as well.
Well, yeah. What I was going to say is, my Children's Lit professor, Maria Cesare, she has a podcast too. Actually, I don't know if she's still doing it, but that's definitely like the place I'm coming from. And for sure, in that class that I took with her, she taught a lot about like the perspective of children and how that influences how children's books are written. Like, are they didactic? Are they trying to teach them something? Are they taking into account those like emotional complexities of children, like that kind of thing? There's like a lot of complicated child psychology going on in almost every YA and children's book, whether they mean to or not.
When it comes to it, I feel like it'd be really good to actually have more experts on a show that can talk about this because they can give different perspectives. And there's things that like, Rick Riordan probably is like, write what you know. He has kids, he was a teacher, which benefits because his literature in so many ways helps with having interacted with kids, because there's some adults like, I'm going to write a kid's book and know nothing about writing children. They're either like the small businessman, like kid in a business suit, or like they're like a force of nature. Kids, like everything I'd touch will be destroyed. But Rick Riordan finds a nice line, and he has different characters like that. But I think this is a really fun email, and I apologize that Google ate it for us, and we didn't read it like in the appropriate time.
Yeah, sorry about that. But it was a really great email. It raised a lot of important points that we wanted to communicate to you guys. We don't want you to think that we don't care about like the emotions of a story. Obviously we do. It's just, No,
I think we talk about the emotions of the story. We just don't talk about, like, we don't get into the minutia of the emotions. I feel like, if that makes any sense, B.
Yeah.
B, did we get any Apple Podcast reviews this week?
Hi, my name is Reed. I'm 10 years old and I'm turning 11 in 10 days. I've been waiting for you to read my email that I sent a day before you did a podcast. It was very sad when I listened till the end and you guys didn't read it. Oh, so this must have been the spam situation, probably.
Yes.
I listen to this podcast when I can't sleep or when the people on my bus are annoying, which is 100% of the time. You are like my second parents. Aw, and make me
so
feel
sweet.
like I have friends who like this stuff. I've been listening to you ever since I started Heroes of Olympus, which was in September. As a birthday present, I would like you to answer 3 questions and sing happy birthday. Okay, maybe not the happy birthday, but do it if you want. Anyway, my questions are, will you ever do a meetup in New York City? Will you ever take a godly parent quiz? And finally, what is Percy Jackson pairing and you love the most? Well, this is funny because we've answered a lot of these already. But happy 2020 and 2020 vision, even though I won't wear glasses. Daughter of Iris, Reed.
Hey, fun fact, B, I started 2020 by breaking my glasses.
Yeah, so that's fun. The irony is strong in this one. I have 2020 vision, so that we're off to a good start, folks, unless I get poked in the eye.
B, I have to consult with our lawyers. Is Happy Birthday the song in the public domain yet?
Yeah, I don't know if it is actually, ironically, but happy birthday regardless.
Happy birthday!
I don't know if I can look past my embarrassment to sing the whole song, but happy birthday to you.
Oh, no, you forgot to do the cha-cha-cha.
Will you ever do a meetup in New York City? We have. We did do a meetup
October.
before the musical. I don't know if you've gotten to that episode yet, or no, you are. You're caught up. So maybe you just missed that episode, or you started listening too late. But we did have a meetup back in October when Zach was visiting. So I don't know if Zach is going to visit again anytime soon. I might be in the city sometime. I would definitely like let listeners know if I was like in a place where you guys could meet up and say hello. Obviously the musical recently ended, so I don't know if I would be going there for a Percy Jackson reason, but who knows? I definitely do that again because it was really fun catching up with people and seeing folks who listen to the show.
So to answer that question, if I were to come back to New York, I mean, that's a strong possibility so far. It's been, 2 hits.
It's been 2 for 2.
2 for 2.
It's like an October tradition at this point.
But maybe that's possible. If you were to like hypothetically, when I usually come now, it's like almost a trend now. I mean, isn't it like it's almost starting into a pattern of I come in during like October season?
Yeah, it just happened to be that's when the musical, like when we were going to see it and when we like set up the interviews with the people from the musical and all that stuff. But who knows? I mean, I've also considered going to LA to meet up with Zach and also with Mia, my other co-host, and stuff like that. So, I mean, that doesn't really help you if you want to have a meetup in New York City. But again, it might happen. It's a very strong possibility. It's happened before. So I had a great time. I would definitely do something like that again if Zach was around. But again, we'd have to coordinate it because he lives
It's all about
the
coordination.
Yeah. Will you take a Godly Parent quiz? We have taken a Godly Parent quiz. I don't remember.
We did that. We have. We did an episode on it like many moons ago.
I don't remember which episode it was, but it's definitely out there. It might even be the name of the episode. Is just We Take a Godly Parent quiz. So it's a while ago. Actually, it might have been when we were still reading.
It was the first book. It was Lightning Thief. It was we were still doing the Lightning Thief. Yeah.
Yeah, sometime around there. I might actually be able to find the episode for you. But regardless, yeah, we definitely did do that. I think I'm a child. I don't know what I got. Am I a child of Athena?
You said Apollo.
I think.
You said Apollo.
I got Apollo. Did I get Apollo?
Yes.
Though? I may have gotten
did.
a different answer. I relate as a child of Apollo, but I don't know if that was the answer of the quiz. So I guess you'll have to find the episode and listen to it.
For me, I relate to probably a child of Hephaestus now, thinking about it.
Right.
Unless I really do like that
episode again. Also, now I have more of a stake in understanding child's. Wow, you have an English degree.
Children's childs. Oh man,
I have more of a stake in like the children of different gods because I know more about them. When I took that quiz, I didn't really know much, so I don't know. Did I get Artemis? I might have gotten Artemis, like a hunter of Artemis or something weird like that. I honestly don't remember. It's been truly years, so you have to look it up and see.
Okay, wow, time to get a bow and arrow. Hope you like deer meat.
Yeah, right. It's coming up actually on our anniversary of starting the show now. It's been 2 years.
Oh, it's crazy.
Right?
Yeah, we're almost
so
there. It's
crazy.
February.
And then what was the last? Oh yeah, what is the Percy Jackson pairing you love the most? We were kind of just talking about this.
We're Team
but,
Rachel.
We don't. Yeah, I mean we like Rachel a lot, but again, it's like that. I don't really like to say that anybody is specifically wrong. Like I don't love Luke as a character, but I understand why people would find the emotional resonance between him and Annabeth kind of important and interesting, and that if he maybe had some sort of redemption arc that would be appealing, or if he didn't, or the angst inherent with that might be interesting, but not my thing.
When it comes to ships for me, it's always has been what the author feels like. Yeah, sometimes I've been really strong about certain ships, but also it comes to me reading big books. But it's one of those where it's whatever ship you like, you're valid on. I'm not going to tell you what's right and what's wrong. That's pretty much it. So B, I'm going to read the next iTunes review, and this one is an interesting one. Are you ready for this?
I guess so.
So it's from Probably Needs Sleep, and it says, could be better. I think in terms of content they talk about is some really great things. I love the level of intellectualism between B and Zach's approach to the novels. As a Percy Jackson fan turned lit major, I think conversations on unreliable narrators' plot structure especially stand out. I also like that they challenge the books because of a literary podcast that only exists to praise the books are tiresome. However, I don't like how often the hosts undermine other people. They respond to criticism by saying it's because all the other people care about romance and basic plot instead of listening. This perceives his intellectual superiority over all other fans, and it really puts me off this podcast. I also don't like the way that Zach referred to May as cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. It felt a little derogatory towards neurodivergent people. I really respect both hosts and think that they have a lot of great things to say and to add to the fandom's dialogue, but I also encourage them to perhaps reevaluate how they talk about other fans and people. Not hate, just feedback.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here. What do you want to address first with this?
I think I will go to the one that's specifically towards me. I'm not going to say it was targeted towards me, but it was something that...
like directed towards the thing that you said.
Yeah, it was directed towards the thing that I said. And first thing I wanted to say is that I'm sorry if that came off that way. I never wanted to perceive it that way. I think when it comes to Percy Jackson, we always champion how, everyone has like ADHD or they have something, their brain is wired in a different way. Like, that's the greatest thing about Percy Jackson. And for me, growing up as a kid with like ADHD, Asperger's, and many, many other things that make me the cocktail that I am today, is that, we don't want to hurt people. And, I made the joke and I'm going to take full responsibility for it. And we're still in the age now of like things that we say from our past that have been like ingrained in our future. Like things like I might not think that cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs like would hurt somebody, but then someone probably may have been bullied.
Yeah, I mean, I would totally cop to that too. I'm sure that there are also examples, even on this show, though I can't think of like a specific. We all have different things that we say that we might like say around friends or just like people we know who that we think it's like an okay thing to say. But especially with like a platform like we have, we never like want to hurt people, even if it was like accidental or if we were just like quote unquote joking or whatever. Like it, something just because it's a joke doesn't mean it doesn't hurt people or like makes light of a serious thing. Like if someone has mental illness. So, I mean, obviously both you and you, Zach, and I have mental illness, have dealt with it and are neurodivergent in different ways. So like we wouldn't want to like diminish people like that or make any of our listeners feel like unwelcome because of things we said. So we do want to like sincerely apologize for that and like make a dedicated like statement to say we do want to try our best to not harm anyone or say anything that would be hurtful.
Yeah, and the most important things a person can say is, I can do better.
Yeah, so that's definitely, I mean, that's just like a sincere criticism that we definitely take to heart, and there's kind of like no excuse for that other than like there's an apology that we can give and say that we'll do better in the future.
All we can do is try better.
Yeah. And then so the other thing about criticism is complicated because I might just like start talking about this.
You were more than welcome to. I talked about my thing.
I do think we definitely get a lot of valid criticism. Even, I mean, like a good example is this message that you gave us. That I think there's a lot of valid criticism that you've sent in this message. And we definitely listen to that. I do think we also get a lot of criticism from people who just like want the podcast to be something that it isn't. And I don't necessarily think that everyone who disagrees with us is wrong, or I mean, like the intellectual superiority comment sort of implies that we think people are not as smart as we are, which
we think that they're below us, which I don't think is true at all.
Yeah, which is definitely not true. Even if someone really hates our show and thinks that what we do is totally wrong, I wouldn't ever dismiss their reasoning as like, oh, they're just dumb or whatever. But we have gotten specific emails and messages that have said things like, oh, all you do is like get sidetracked and have dumb jokes, or you talk about these things, but you don't talk about these things that I want you to. And at a certain point, we also don't want this show to feel like, I don't know. And there's like sort of no level of entitlement that people should have where it's like, if we're making a creative thing that's our own idea, we don't want to like be like, oh yeah, of course, we're going to like listen to you and we're going to listen to you, because truly in the same week, we will get an email that says, I love that you do this thing. You should keep doing this thing. And then the very same thing that we did, someone will say, oh, I hate that you do this thing. You should do more of this other thing that's the opposite, or you should completely change your show in this way. And so there's really kind of no way to please everyone. And as a result, we kind of just have to go with what our impulses are and what we find fulfilling about the show. I would never say that, you know, someone who's more focused on quote unquote ships or whatever, we kind of touched on this with the last the email of a few messages ago about how, you know, oh, like you guys don't care about ships or whatever. And it's like, that's definitely not coming from a place of like, oh, if you care about those things, you're dumb.
You're
or
dumb.
that's,
No, it's not like that
or
at
if you
all.
disagree with us, then of course you're that kind of person. I don't think that that's necessarily true. We might have takes about certain characters, whatever, that have nothing to do with that, and you just disagree, and that's like totally fine. I don't want anybody to ever think that just because we have a specific idea and focus for how this show is going to go, that we think anybody else's opinions about it are inherently like intellectually inferior. We don't think that at all. Absolutely not. I don't want you guys to think that. I don't want you to, you know, feel hurt by that or feel like we're trying to say that you're not smart. I don't know. That, like, I don't know.
So what I'll say about this, B, is that when it comes to this, like, I'm not an expert at anything. I can tell you, like, right now, I'm happy and I love being ignorant on certain things, because being smart and like being an expert on something isn't fun, because you'll never be able to challenge, you know, views or opinions. And for me, when it comes to like to this whole situation, is that I would never look down to anybody. Like, I guarantee you right now, there are plenty of listeners that could school us on Percy Jackson 3 Ways to Sunday, and they're like 10 years old. And you know what? That's perfectly fine. Like, I would love to talk to those people. And it's one of those where, like, when it comes to Percy Jackson, or I guess not even Percy Jackson, when it comes to anything you're a fan of, you can be passionate about it. Like, there's things like we could talk about, like, I could talk about Star Wars until the sun comes down. And, like, was I disappointed with this new trilogy? Of course. Did I want it to be the best that it can? Heck yeah. Like, before the credits roll, I am the biggest optimist of any movie. Like, I'm willing to believe that anything is good, anything can be bad, is like out the window until I can make my own opinion of it. And you know what? I can have the same things. Like, when it comes to Star Wars, I can easily like armchair direct, but at the end of the day, it's not my property. Same as when it comes to Percy Jackson. It's not my property, but the property that I do own is the friendship between B and I, and we talk about things, and
We are
some
our
things
own intellectual property.
we are our own intellectual
the
property.
extended Bryce and Zach universe.
Yes, it's the Bryce and Zach cinematic universe, though horsing around may or may not be copyrighted. I'm in the works with our lawyers.
Yeah, that's true. I think it might be based on what do you call it, from what is that show, BoJack?
Yeah, Boach. Oh, you know what? I will get our lawyers and we'll figure this out.
Well, I don't know. It's also a colloquialism, so maybe they don't have a leg to stand on.
Oh no, we just changed the horsin'. We put a Z at the end. Around.
Horizon around. No,
Yeah.
that doesn't sound right.
Oh no, that doesn't sound right at all. But even when it comes to our show, like, you know, people like that emo that we got, we're not an expert on child psychology. We're not an expert on child development. Some people are experts in that stuff, and we'd like to have people on that as more. Maybe with this new year, we'll try to get more bonus episodes with experts on. Like, if there's things that you really want us to like talk about, we're more than welcome to like find people that can talk about them. Like, I've always wanted to do an episode with an actual like person that knows mythology inside and out as an expert, and get their twist on like what they think.
I do think, like, I mean, the very premise of the show, like I was talking about a few messages ago, does rely on a certain level of ignorance from both of us, where you might be coming at it from the perspective of someone who has nostalgia for like the series, so you might not like pick up on something as if you were reading it for the first time, because you have like these sort of preconceived things you already know about the story. And then I'm coming at it from someone who both doesn't really know a lot about mythology, other than like some really minor stuff that I may have learned in like, you know, some class I had to take in undergrad, and also coming at it as someone who's like a lit major. So I'm like analyzing it, but I'm also new to this. So it's like we're both coming at it with bits and pieces of information. We're not experts by any means. I don't think that our approach to Percy Jackson is inherently superior to any other approach that someone might have. It just happens to be our approach. And I guess that's like the main takeaway from like any of the ways that we've responded to criticism is, I don't want you to think, oh, well, if you did it that way, you'd be dumb and wrong and we're right. But it's kind of like, at the same time, we can't really change the very format of how we do our show based on what people say, because everyone has their own take on how it should be. And then we would never please anybody. So we might as well just kind of go with what we want to do, because that's like that's really the only approach we can take.
I think the only other piece of advice I have is like if people are very strong and passionate about the content that they want to make, you're more than welcome to, get a microphone. Heck, I'll even help you pick out the right stuff you need. And you can always do a Percy Jackson podcast. There's no such thing as competition in the podcast sphere, I believe. Like, we're all in this together. And if you want to make that type of content, go for it. I'll help you every step of the way.
Exactly. I mean, we totally support other Percy Jackson podcasts who definitely don't go at it the exact same way we do. You know, there's tons of them. There's Demipod. There's, what is the other one?
Floor 600.
Floor 600. There's also what is it? That Damn podcast. There's like a new one that just
there's a new one.
There's a bunch of different ones that have popped up from like different people, different content creators, and I'm absolutely sure that every one of them have taken away from these books something different than we would have. Even if I had this show with someone different, even if Zach had picked a different co-host, all of those different variations would have been a different show than what Radio Camp Half-Blood is. But like that's what, we are what we are. And I don't think we want to make any claims that it's like, this is the only way you can talk about literature, or this is the only intellectual, interesting way to talk about Percy Jackson specifically. Like, of course that's not true.
And we're not the only Percy Jackson podcast out there. If you don't like our show, you're more than welcome to listen to other things.
Yeah, if our very format is something you're not thrilled about, like, I don't know what to say other than, like, I'm sorry, but like there's other shows that might fulfill that better, and I hope you find them, because like there's tons of other cool content out there. Yeah. But again, I'm very willing to take any criticism that's more about like specific things we've said or how we can be better advocates or better people who are in like a somewhat public forum. Like, obviously we're not like the most prominent figures in like Percy Jackson fandom. There's tons of other people and whatever, I don't know, the people in the musical, there's, whatever, there's any number of people who have like a public voice in this fandom, but in general, we do kind of have a responsibility to not hurt anybody, and that's kind of like our main goal, is to like just listen if we have said anything that might like make a marginalized person feel like they've been attacked in some way, or like feel unsafe in our like community or anything like that. That's definitely the kind of criticism that I take very seriously, and something that we can change for ourselves. As far as like the actual function of the show, there's only so much we can do to change that without kind of like changing it every other week, because there's like no way to make everyone pleased with it. So I don't know.
And even when it comes to criticism, the thing I've always said about anything is like, I will never say a movie sucks without backing it up with why I think it sucks. The same as with like when it comes to emails with criticism, we like it when people kind of elaborate, like, why do you think this way? Like, why do you think, we hate Percy Jackson? Could you elaborate, please? Because chances are 99% of the time, those people are writing it very passionately and they're just sending it rather than, sending an angry text, like breaking up with someone. Chances are you should wait that day before you really send that email. Some people can get really passionate about it. And it's not our intent to, marginalize anyone. We're not here to like make like a platform of like hate. Our whole goal here is to try to bring the Percy Jackson community together. And I think we've done a good job about it. There's things that we need to work on. Like, obviously sometimes we might come off as like jerks at times when it comes to some emails, but that's also because we don't have much to go on. But also, here's the thing, is like, we're reading someone's, their platform, and we're trying to do our rebuttal, and then there's no rebuttal to that. So there is just like a 1-2 punch.
It's just us like saying a thing where it's like, well, you're wrong about your criticism. It's like, I don't ever want to tell someone they're wrong about their criticism. Like, it's kind of almost impossible to do that, right? If someone says, you guys talk too much, it's like, that's not wrong, really.
No, that's more like, you're fair about this.
We do talk about other stuff that isn't Percy Jackson, but that also isn't necessarily a bad thing if that's what we wanted to do with the show, if that makes sense. So it's like, or if you guys focus too much on this thing, like, maybe they're totally right, but that's also like, it's their opinion as to whether or not that makes it a good show. It's just sort of very arbitrary, I guess. I could find a million podcasts who I personally wouldn't enjoy them, but that doesn't like make them necessarily bad. And same thing with like, we're not necessarily good just because we like what we do. It's just that's why we do it though. It's like, just we enjoy it, and some people hopefully find some worth out of it. I hope so. We're not just screaming into a void.
And in the end of the day, that's all we want. So we want to have an open dialogue with everybody. When we leave our emails public, you can reach us on Twitter. Like, there's places that you can easily reach us with. Like, the most surprising thing, I've never told you about this, but we've gotten some weird messages from people that I just delete off Twitter. Like, things that, like, ever since doing this podcast, like, people have sent us, like, death threats. People have sent us things that have just been, like, the most vulgar, slanderous, or like
right, yeah. So that's
derogatory.
Like, that's criticism that isn't even worthy of acknowledging.
And most of that stuff I don't even tell you about, but I keep all that stuff. I report to people, and we just move on. But at the end of the day, we're sorry, and we'll do better. That's all we can do.
Yeah. Really, thank you again for sending this message.
Thank you so much for that. Email.
I obviously can tell that you you care about the show, and you just wanted to express your concerns. And anyway, I hope that this helps, and that we haven't just sort of avoided the question or like somehow made things worse. I don't know. I don't know. Let us know. Maybe email us so we could like talk to you.
It's one of those things that it comes with time, and also, with great power comes great. Can I say without getting sued?
With great powers comes great sponsorabilities.
Oh man, responsibilities. There we go. Isn't that right, Spooder Man? Is this
Uncle Ben?
No, it's Uncle Benny. Got to get it right, B. B, where can they find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at bkellygorman, and you can find me on Tumblr at twinpoetry.tumblr.com.
If you want to find me on Twitter, you can find me at Suda41, that's SUDA41. If you want to follow our show on Twitter, that's at halfblood_radio. If you want to email the show, you can email us at radiocamphhalfblood@gmail.com. I promise that I'll be checking those spam folders, because those spam bots are just like eating the things up, like nom nom nom. If you want to find our t-shirts, you can go to tpublic.com, www.tpublic/radiocamphhalfblood to get some t-shirts. We have a patreon.com/radiocamphhalfblood. That money helps keep the lights on. We want to thank our sponsors, Dashlane, because you guys are super amazing, and we love doing what we do. Well, B, I'm Zach.
I'm B.
And let's keep staying mortal. See ya.
And keep horsing around.
Oh, and keep horsing around. Oh, man, I'm surprised we haven't changed that tag yet. Oh.
All right, thanks, guys.
See ya. Bye.